And in Mark 12, verses 1 through 12, we'll break this into two parts. And so we will take the first 5 verses first. The parable of the wicked husbandman.
A man planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it, and dug a pit for the winepress, and built a tower, and let it out to tenants, and went into another country. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants to get from them some fruit of the vineyard. And they took him, and beat him, and sent him away empty-handed. Again he sent to them another servant, and they wounded him in the head, and treated him shamefully. And he sent another, and him they killed, and so with many others. Some they beat, and some they killed.
Of course, here he's talking now about God and the world, particularly in this time, his own people, the Jewish people. He's talking about now that he had put in his vines, protected it with a hedge, dug a pit because he expected fruit out of this, built a tower to protect it from enemies and watch for foxes, rented it out on a lease share basis, and left the country. One after another, he sent back servants to collect his share of the results, the crops, for his rent. This, of course, is a reference to Old Testament prophets being sent, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and others, to witness to the Jewish nation. But he talks about here the prophets that were rejected. Isaiah reportedly, not in the scripture, but reportedly by tradition, was killed by being sawed in two. Jeremiah was put in the dungeon and was in mud up to his armpits. Others were mistreated, misinterpreted, rejected. Now we turn to verse 6 following through 12. And this is going to be a reference to the coming of Jesus instead of the Old Testament prophets.
He had still one other, a beloved son. Finally he sent to them, saying, They will respect my son. But those tenants said to one another, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. And they took him, and killed him, and cast him out of the vineyard. What will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the tenants and give the vineyard to others. Have you not read this scripture? The very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes.
This, of course, is a reference to God sending Jesus. And again, for our Jewish friends, I don't really apologize, but I recognize how contrary I'm going to your point of view, and I would like to be a gentleman about this. But this is a reference prophetically to his coming rejection and crucifixion. This is the heir. Let us kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. And he quotes the scripture that the stone which the builders rejected was made at the head of the corner. It's a little difficult at this remove of time to know how accurate or how legendary the account is. But you recall that when Solomon's temple was being constructed, the word in the scripture is that the stones were so accurately fabricated away from the temple site that when they were brought to the temple site, they fitted, and there was no need to take a chisel and a hammer and redress the stones there. They were put into place without the sound of a hammer that is working on them. And the legend, at least, is that there was a peculiarly cut stone which they couldn't find to fit any place, and it was cast over the side of the work site. And when the temple was just ready to be finished, that there was a missing last stone at the very top part of the temple. Now, this should not mislead you into thinking there's a steeple here like a church, because this is more or less a flat-topped building. But one of the very fine corners, top corners, there is a missing stone, and someone remembered they'd thrown away this stone, went down the slope into the weeds growing down there and discovered it again and brought it back, and here this stone which they had thrown away is actually the stone they needed to finish the building. Jesus refers to this type of a point of view and said, haven't you heard that the rejected stone is actually the one which belongs to the top, making a reference to his own rejection when actually he belongs at the very pinnacle of the temple. And these people tried to arrest him, but for fear of the popularity he had with the common people, they desisted. And then it goes on to say that I've not exaggerated here, because they perceived that he had told the parable against them, so they left him and went away. We're going to continue in Matthew 22, verses 1 through 14, some additional parables